Hello, investors and traders, and welcome to the Midweek Market Report. I'm AJ Monte, Chief Market Strategist with Sticky Trades, and we have about 5 minutes left before the end of the day. You'll hear the closing bell, and I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at SLV, being that I put out that publication on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, that is X. I got to correct that. But we have a buy area right now that we're touching into in this gap fill. And if you go to my Twitter page, you'll see that I put that post. If you'd like to track along with the SLV trades that I do, I make that very public. All you have to do is put hashtag AJSLV trades, all one word there, hashtag AJSLV trades, and that will bring you to all of the other SLV publications that I put out, showing everyone where I'm buying, where I'm selling, and the percentages that I am trading that contract. And so I like to get in and out. It's fun. I parlay the position. If you've been following along, I sold at a 5%, sold another 5% higher, sold another 5% higher, and today I bought it all back plus more, because that's what parlaying the position does. It allows you to develop a stronger cash balance and buying power. And then when it drops, you buy on the technical signals and you have more than what you started with. Now, I've been doing this for 17 years, trading and parlaying that position. But I started trading silver back in 1982 on COMEX, so this is something I'm very familiar with. I like to trade, and it's one that I could teach from. Now, if you look at the chart on SLV, you can see that we have a gap above the market now. Let me zoom in there. It gapped up. There's gaps all over the place, actually, but there's a gap below the market here. It gapped up. It started to trade higher, and then I started selling 5%, 5%, 5%. Today I bought it all back at 21.95. One of the other things about my X post, there I corrected myself, okay, is that I give the market and those who follow me more time to react. So I usually put the post out. I'll wait 5 minutes because I allow the public to get in ahead of me, whether I'm buying or selling. I like to sleep at night, and I don't want to be accused of pushing the market around, so I don't. I could, and there's nothing illegal about that, but how many times have you turned on the financial shows and you see these analysts talking about a trade that they like? Well, guess what? Before they showed up on air, they get in there, they take a position, and then they tell the audience about it, and it pushes it up. Now, I don't know exactly when I'll be selling next, but I can give you some clues that if this gap looks like it's going to fill, and then we see a drop in volume at that particular point in time, and maybe a pivot on the CCI down here, I might sell out of another 5% of the position, but it's too early to tell. I have to wait for those sell signals to show up, and we're far away from that. Now, as I mentioned, we're only minutes away from the close. I just want to show you what's happening with DIA. If you remember, my forecast from last week was a two-part forecast with the volume forecast added. And what I did is I said we would most likely test this resistance up at the top. Then we'd see a drop in volume, which we did. Today, we have a bearish engulfing. That's not a harami. That's a full-fledged bearish engulfing. That's when the red candle completely engulfs the previous green candle. And you can see it, even though that's a small sliver, I could tell it's green because I have my volume bars matched to the candle. All right, so that's a bearish engulfing. And we might squeak out with higher volume on the way down here today. In addition to that, you can see down below we have a very close to a sell signal. Once the CCI drops below that red line and goes below 100, that will generate a sell signal, and then you'll have a lot more sellers coming into the mix at that particular point in time. So I still think that we're going down to fill this gap maybe by the end of this week or possibly into the beginning of next week, but there's a lot of gaps down below the market. And so nothing has changed on my DIA forecast right there. And if you look at the minute by minute chart, again, we very rarely get to do this while the markets are open. You could see in the final minutes, minute by minute, they're still selling it right into the close. So that's not going to prime the opening for tomorrow with buyers. It's probably going to be stacked with sell orders coming in. So we'll have to see. We might even gap down tomorrow on DIA. Again, still too early to tell. You can't forecast gaps. It's hard enough, forecasting volume and such, but gaps are impossible to forecast because they generally shock the market with news up or down. Now, if we look at IWM, again, we're down to the final seconds of the day. We see a shooting star right there. This was a 4-part forecast that I put out last Friday. Said we would go up. We hit that upside target. Then I said we would drop. Look at that. That's as close as you're going to get to pinning that volume target. So the volume did drop. And then I said that would trigger the CCI to move lower and pivot, which that did. And now we're waiting for the downside target on IWM to hit. So that downside target, again, at the end of that target line is 182.14. So I think we're very close to seeing that hit as well. And so that is also, we're seeing pressure on the end of the day here, and there's no shadow underneath that candle, so they're pushing IWM right on the lows. Now, if we look at QQQ, that's the tech sector, and there we go. We have the official close. We have another candle that is very red. We did hit the downside target that I set last week. We did that on Monday. And if you look, there's almost no shadow there. That's as close as you're going to get to a bearish Marabuzzo. A Marabuzzo is a red body candle that just solid red with no shadows above or below. That means that the price opened at the top of the body of that candle and closed at the bottom. And that's very, very close to what we have there. We just had just a little bit of a bounce at the end in the final minutes there. You can see this with the minute chart. See that tiny little minute of a rally is what caused that little tiny shadow. But if it wasn't for that minute, that was a bearish Marabuzzo. Keep that in your notebook so you know what to look for next time. So again, the Qs, I think we're going to go a little bit lower by the end of this week. Even though we hit that target, I think we could go down to start filling this gap. You can see the oscillators are still moving lower. The CCI started moving sideways here, so that's more bearish than bullish. And so I would put a target down at the gap fill down there right around 378.45. Now, if we look at SPY, you can see pretty similar to what we had here. I had a multiple, target forecast, had an upside to test this resistance. Can't see that resistance line right there, but we did make an attempt. It didn't touch it, and that resistance was not my target, but that was a resistance point that goes back further in time. Even on the weekly chart, if you look back here, that resistance is back from, March, and then it tested again here in July, and I think it's going to start pivoting lower from that level this week and into next week. So if you look at the weekly, that's a shooting star. If you go to the daily, that's a bearish engulfing. You have this drop in volume that was forecasted, and you have the pivot on the CCI, which I forecasted last week. So there you go. This is part one, upside, then the drop in volume, then the pivot, then the low side. It's a 4-part forecast. You're only going to get that at Sticky Trades. And stay tuned for much more technical analysis education to come. So finally, the VIX, guess what? We got a green candle, but the CCI is still moving lower. I think that VIX could start to move higher. We'll get a pivot. I'm not going to put a 2-day forecast on the VIX because I have a longer-term forecast back here up around 1811 that I think that will hit eventually. So that is my midweek report. Remember, today is Wednesday, so from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I do the rapid fire stock analysis session where my goal is to go over 50 stocks, at least 50 stocks in 60 minutes and give you some more TA education, and doing these forecast lines helps quite a bit, especially with the new folks that are looking to trade and read charts for the first time. So thank you so much for following. Please like and share and comment, all that good stuff that gets us on the algorithm, and I'll talk to you on the next video. So long.